Totally legit, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I saw. Hey, Peter. Hey, what's up?
All right, call to order the meeting of, where are we? June 7th, 2021. Please stand and join me in pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Bellinger,
Here.
Kramick,
Here.
Councilmember Swift,
Here?
Mayor Pro Tem Legero,
Here.
and Mayor Alves.
Here. Okay, looks like we're gonna see what we got here. Let's start off with the consent calendar, correct? Is that our first item?
Yes, correct.
All right, let's start with the consent calendar. These items are considered routine in nature and act upon a single action unless requested by an individual council member or a member from the public for special consideration. Do I have a motion?
Yeah. Mayor Alves, regarding item number 2, I will be abstaining from voting on check number 9790.
All right. Do I have a motion for the balance?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, carries 5-0. Staff communications.
So I'll address a couple of items before we go to the discussion. I just wanted to give an update regarding lifeguards. Initially, we had said, I think we had 15 or 17 applications. Unfortunately, we are down to 7 lifeguards. Whether it was they chose another position or they didn't qualify through the training. So our priority will be providing lessons, and then if we can squeeze in some public swim, we will be doing that, but it will be at reduced capacity.
When's it starting?
This week is training for the lifeguards, and the first session of swim lessons start next week,
So
on the
what's date
14th.
14th, okay, June 14th.
Yeah.
Is that when open swim would start too, or what?
We will not have open swim in the first 2 weeks because we are putting in swim lessons, priority over the public swim. So we're gonna have to do we either may have to drop off some of the swim lessons in order to offer public swim in the 3rd session, I think.
Because public swim is every day when we have access to the pool, right?
We used to offer
Used
it
to be.
every day, yes. But based on the lifeguards and the swim lessons and having to do reduced capacity in the swim lessons are taking up more time. And so if you don't have enough staff to cover all of the hours, you can only work them so long. So
What are the hours
that's
for the
one
pool?
of our issues. When we've offered public swim in the past, it was 1 to 5.
1 to 5.
Yeah, and swim lessons are typically offered in the mornings and then in the evenings.
There's
So you
no
have-
night swimming.
There's no open public swim at night, no.
Okay.
There are swim lessons in the evenings.
To what hour?
I don't know what the final one is.
Okay.
And this is obviously a result of COVID and what it's taken.
It's a combination. I mean, it's a combination of having to reduce capacity or the class sizes in swim lessons. So we had to increase the times of how many swim lessons we're providing, and then just having enough lifeguards to be able to man both swim lessons and public swim is becoming an issue.
I'm interested how come we're down to 7 when we started with 15 applicants? It was,
So they either weren't able to get lifeguard training and get certified, so those 17 applicants were not certified lifeguards, so they have to go. Some of them failed from there, or they didn't get the training, and I think 1 or 2 of them chose to go to another job.
sure.
Not
So
necessarily lifeguarding, but took another position.
Those lifeguards have 2 roles, one as for swim coaches and then one as lifeguards for the open swim.
Correct.
We're limited on our capacity, so we can only do what we can do at this point.
Correct, yeah. We are trying to squeeze in some open swim in there.
Okay.
And then just an update on the Hogan Ennis Park bathroom. I did submit the project to the state parks and grants. And I'm just waiting for their approval on that project. I asked for a timeline, but I didn't get a response to that yet, so I'm not sure how long that's going to be. And then you may have noticed today, they've started on our solar canopies. They started at the community center, at the library. Last week, they actually started at our wastewater treatment plant, and tomorrow they'll be starting here at the police department. Again, that's proposed about a 6-week construction. So mid-July, it should be completed.
What's going on at the community center? I see them doing a lot of work over there.
That's the solar canopies. We're putting solar canopies out along the roadway.
So those are gonna be the constructed things?
Yes.
Gonna be over the
Like
parking lot?
like a carport.
What they got
looking.
at the high school, essentially?
Yeah,
Okay, so the construction with the solar
Yes.
panels on top?
correct. Yeah.
Also doing it over here, you know.
Right.
Yeah. And at the library. The library is getting some small panels there also. And then staff has received a request from Jilton for a 2.5% increase. And we just want to know if the council is okay moving forward with a public hearing process for this increase.
I thought we just approved an increase.
Yeah, I
for that,
thought we
didn't
just did.
We did last year, yes, or
Here?
with the beginning of this year. Oh, last year, beginning of this year, yes.
Well, I'd like to do more discussion on it before we do anything.
Okay. Well, I mean, it goes through, so, as we've discussed before, there,
They're also working on a new plant, which is gonna require another bump. So does that include in the bump, that 2.5?
No.
So they're gonna ask for 2.5, they already asked for another one, and then in addition to that, when the new plant's built, they're gonna want it bumped. So I'd like to go over some of this stuff, what we're doing, before we sign up for it.
okay, so I'll put it on the next agenda.
That'll work.
That's all I have. I don't know if Chief or Dominique have anything outside of, nope.
I don't think I have too much.
Okay, then.
I just wanted to let you know that we did receive the plans for the Orlando's Market, so those are currently under review. I'm sorry?
Nothing, go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. So that is moving forward. The Merchant Yard is just about completed. We're just helping finish that out probably in the next few weeks, maybe a month or so, on the city side.
Is there a projection on Orlando's, what you might finish or get in there?
They indicated on their plans that they're hoping to open in January.
Okay,
So, yeah, so I mean, we'll try our best to get everything
January.
going, but yeah, they're looking
That's
for
with the
January.
gas station and their thing opening up?
That's what their estimated opening is, so, might be shorter, might be longer, it just depends, because they have to route through San Joaquin County for all of their underground and gas station stuff too, so they have two different agencies that they have to get everything through. And then moving forward right here on the discussion regarding the senior housing, I should have the draft for the request for qualifications, ready for review at the next meeting.
RFQ?
The RFQ, yes, sorry.
Very good.
And I'll run it through staff and legal counsel probably this week and next week and get that first draft or for your review to have any changes. If you've noticed on the properties available within the city for future development, a lot of the ones that the main developers were interested in are no longer being listed. Like the auction yard property isn't up for sale, it's been removed from the site. We had that one, the 2-acre
Just a
parcel.
moment, is not for sale because it's been sold or not for sale because it's been removed from the market? Which is it?
I think they have somebody interested, and so it's been pulled from advertisement because they're probably in some type of negotiation. I don't believe it's been marked sold. It doesn't say pending, but it's not listed for sale.
They're in negotiation.
They're in negotiations, and that was the property that the county was looking at as well. And so that's limited on the properties that are available. What's left on the market right now are the lots that are located on Main Street, which lack all utility connections. So there's a significant amount of money you'd have to pay to provide services to
Where in
that
Main
area.
Street?
if you're driving down Main Street or Santa Fe out towards Riverbank,
Yes.
on the left-hand side, right past Vine.
Sidewalks are supposed to go in.
Yeah, those are all in city limits, and those are all
Between
vacant,
Riley
undeveloped.
and, also.
Vine.
Vine,
Yeah,
okay.
Vine and Riley.
Got it.
Yeah, so they lack utilities for water, sewer, and storm, and so in order, we get a lot of interest in those properties. That's probably the most popular area
But
right
the
now.
infrastructure expenditures.
But there is no infrastructure, so whoever develops them has to put in all of the lines, extending our lateral lines at the sizes that we currently have and bringing them down to those properties. And so it's unique.
Renders those properties worthless.
Yeah, so for now, I guess. And so that limits it. The other property available is the one on Lillian that's been for sale for a while. And so a lot of the developers that we have been talking with which I do have another developer that's supposed to be submitting some conceptuals this week. I met with them last week. They're moving forward. So a lot of them do have their eyes set on the city property because it's the most available to them. And all of them express willingness in providing, what the council wants in order to obtain that property.
Are you referring to the parkland?
Parkland, correct, future parkland. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
And so, we did talk with RHF as well, who's the property owner of Heritage House, and they were basically inquiring as to, how much land the city was willing to part with. They're getting ready to move forward with some conceptuals as well. So as you know, that whole 18 acres is one piece of land, and in order to move forward with any projects, we would need to subdivide a portion of it off. And so I'm inquiring if you want me to go ahead and start moving forward with the costs associated with doing that, so we have that information available for us, or even to move forward with that process if we know for sure this is something that we're going to do. The area that they're most looking at is along Escalon Avenue, and so it would take up a portion of that area that we've got for the overflow parking, and so then that would be something else that we would need to address later on, as well as maybe a portion of where the future skate park is located as well. So that might be something we need to work on.
Well, maybe we could
A little
talk to-
better.
Maybe the council members can have some input and get an idea where we're at with this. Councilman Swift, do you have any ideas on this?
Well, I'm just thinking conceptually, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to look at, how much would it cost to subdivide it? 'Cause I'm sure no matter what we do and everything, every discussion we've had has had to do with a portion of that. And obviously we would want to try to, figure out from there, what portion are we talking about, And I think that if we could, hold off the parking lot as well as this future skate park, there's still a lot of ground out there for somebody to do something special with.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that we really probably ought to be looking at, just what are we looking at cost-wise, and what are we looking at the value of the land that we're talking about, and how would we want to deal with it within the parks budget? I forget which fund that money ultimately would go back to.
Well, ultimately, yeah, we go back to the Parks and Recreation
Yeah,
funds.
okay, yeah.
So what you're suggesting is possibly we get more of an analysis done before we move forward.
Yeah, because it sounds like that's kind of sort of the hot thing, that now all of a sudden these guys, now they know that we've
I don't
considered this,
disagree.
and
I
now
just
we've
don't
got
want to
to.
spend a lot of money on anything until we're for sure what we're gonna be doing.
No, I don't want to either.
Oh, but
Well, and I think that's where
And they're
staff,
kind of in the same
Yeah.
boat,
Right,
yeah,
good.
Yeah.
where they're okay with spending,
yeah.
a couple thousand, but when it gets to the point where they're trying to provide everything you want, they want to kind of have some type of guarantee that we would actually move
Well, maybe we
forward
could
at
see
some
some
point.
conceptual information from them,
Yeah.
give us an idea we want to get into a business with them. Councilman Bellinger, do you have anything?
Yeah, same kind of thing. I don't want to pigeonhole us into, we're only going to willing to give 5 acres or whatever. I want to see the various projects. Somebody's might be a 3-acre project, and one might be a 6, depending on what best fits what we want and what they're willing to provide. So leave that flexible, but that shouldn't change the estimates of what it's going to cost us, other than the cost per acre to move out of that fund, and how much it's going to cost to roll the paperwork on the backside, if you will.
Okay.
I don't have any problem with rolling through that. We'll spend a little bit of time and effort on that, and see what the drawings are conceptually from the developers, and see if something hits on point for us or hits most of the buttons.
Councilman Crummage?
So in regards to the parkland there, and right now we've expanded the overflow parking. There's also a house there that I think the city is currently renting out and getting a little bit of revenue from. But if you look at the greater picture of what can we do with that space, I just talked to somebody today that had a personal story of somebody in Escalon who is to a point in their life where they need to move out of Escalon because they can't afford to live here. They can't sell their house in order to live here, so they're looking at moving out. So I think regardless of the overflow parking that we put in and we paid for, I mean, it's been a good thing. I think it's being utilized. I can see it. We have the house there. Those things, I think, should take a back seat to the larger picture, the big view of utilizing that space for a developer to come in and build something that we need as a community. To me, frankly, if that means moving away from what we've already put in as far as the overflow parking, if we need to use that space, if the developer wants that space, if we need to do away with the house that's there, which I believe is bringing in $1,500 a month or something like that for the city,
Correct.
we need to consider that option. We need to look at that parcel not as a, what is it being currently used at, but what can it be used as? And so my opinion is that we would go back to these developers or anybody who's expressed interest in that parcel and say, yes, we're willing to look at this whole space and decide, what do you need to make your project pencil out? How can the city partner with you in that endeavor to make this project work? Because it's clearly a need. This is not something we can let go and just keep kicking down the curb. We need to find a way to utilize that land as best we can. That would be my opinion on that.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I think that moving forward on that is appropriate at this point. The fact that we spent money on a master plan out there that most people recognize is not gonna happen in our lifetime, I don't think. We need to be realistic, and we need to start looking at that property as what are the needs now,
Okay.
and what can we do with it? And we can make adjustments. We've got a lot of property out there that's really gonna be able to accommodate all the things that we need and what the community wants. And I think we start out with this project and see what we can do.
Okay, so originally I've been making it a cap at like 5 acres, but if it's my understanding, we can remove that cap and just let them kind of be open with
Yeah, so
the type of project that, as long as it meets our criteria, how much land do you need to do it?
So what is Hogan Ennis right now is what, 4 or 5 acres total?
I'm sorry, I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I'm not
but-
sure what
Looks
the
like it's
actual
more
park
than
is, but
9 or 10 maybe. It
the
feels like-
available land's about almost 19 acres.
Yeah, so we've got 19 to play with.
Yeah.
If you take 3, 5, 7, 10 of that, for this project, it may allow you to develop the rest of it, or you can enter into that long-term lease with a farmer that wants to use it.
Okay.
I mean, that's realistically, that's what we're, dealing with, so
Okay,
I'm good with that.
Okay, well,
update that.
basically, I just don't want a situation where we're spending a lot of money and not going in any direction. So if we're gonna get involved and take staff's time, I wanna make sure we're not gonna do this twice.
Sure.
I don't want any of these projects where we're getting into them and all, say, well, we do that. So what I'm saying in essence is, if we get something substantial from any one of these interested parties, then it makes sense for us to proceed. But I don't wanna proceed unless it's something substantial, because I've seen too many times where sometimes we jump the cart in front of the horse, and let's not do that on this one, please. Because
Okay.
money is not one of those abundant supplies that we have.
Can I make one last comment there, Mayor?
You can.
So I think what collectively maybe we're looking at up here, I know I am, is if a developer was to bring a plan forward, and, I mean, they'd obviously have to put some money out to develop these plans, but if they were to come and look at that parcel, the 19 acres that we have, and say, here's what we need, regardless of what's there now, regardless of the parking that we've built, regardless of the house, and they say, this is what we need, this is the project we're looking at, this is what we're gonna provide to the city, this is the benefit to the city, I think that would trump what's already there. We already know that we have utilities that run down that street. We have sewer, we have water, right? So we're not talking about bringing in those new lines. We're talking about stubbing, and we're talking about bringing them essentially to the property line, but they're already in the street. So it is a good spot. Also, what Mayor Pro Tem Legero said about possibly the ability of developing the rest of that property, or maybe expanding the park, doing a skate park, doing whatever. I think that is a good spot that we need to focus on, and I believe, personally for me, but I believe everybody up here is open, but like the mayor said, we do want to see something. We want to see some idea of what somebody has in mind, right? Rather than just, hey, I'm interested. Okay, well, what are you interested in, right? Kind of thing, so.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, I agree with that, because it's not to the exclusion of the other things that we had planned out there. It's more in a manageable, realistic way to do it, because it's kind of annoying when you have these massive, projects that everyone, here's conceptually, this is what we want, and then we spend $22,000 to have
Drives me insane.
this, master plan designed when you don't even have the funding mechanism in
Bingo.
mind. So then you spend the money that could be used someplace else to do this. So we need to do this in digestible, bite-size, projects. So we look at this, the facility out there. Where do they want it? Where's it best gonna fit on that property? How is it gonna allow the rest of the property to develop? We still need overflow parking. We're still gonna get a skate park, because we have money that we can leverage to do these projects. So as we go forward on this, yes, we designate some property, we try and work out some development for this project, but at the same time, I don't want to lose sight of the other needs that, again, we went to the community, we sent out, a survey, what are the top priorities that you want, and we've accomplished 2 of the 3. I think we can make the parking more permanent, though, so we have more good parking out there, and then it's a skate park. So I want to incorporate those, and I think this is the year that as we look at this realistically, that's what we do, and we look at ways to get those 2 projects in addition to this project done.
Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem Legero, I appreciate that very much, because you're right, especially with, the overflow parking. The last thing I want to do is return back to the days where we had parents and kiddos trying to run for their lives across Escalon Belota, because we've sacrificed one need of the community for another need of the community. I think we can do both.
Maybe talk to the developer when they're doing it, where we have the overflow, give us up against the
Feed store.
the feed store, thank you. The first 20 foot to have a one-way street that goes back past their development to the overflow parking lot, and they exit out off of Arthur or something, so that we have those developers know how to do this way better than my
Yeah.
thought is doing
Yeah.
right now. But something where we can extend it reasonably, so it's not a tortured situation for everybody to be able to enjoy our community center and our ball fields.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, we're not trying to chase a developer away. On the contrary, we're trying to bring them in, and we're saying, we're gonna work with you, but we need you to give us some sort of plan that meets the needs, things we already have, as well as what can we do. And I think at that point, we're very open to talking to them about how can we make this project work? How can we help you do that? We're not just gonna hit you up for tons and tons of fees, and you know what I'm saying? We're trying to find a way to work with them, but we need an idea of what are they planning? What do
Sure.
they
I
want?
think all the feedback is pretty much on target. I will say this, though, the one critical thing that I want to remember is that the RFQ is critical here. We do not want to get into bed with anybody in this situation and go through any sort of frustrating, we want somebody legit, somebody that's gonna come on board, they have a track record, we can count on this individual, they're financially sound, and the committee's on board with it, because we don't want to dance in the same dance we've had with other people dealing with those situations, because this situation is gonna be very, very critical, and it has to be done correctly for it to be what we were looking for. And that's why, and the other thing to keep in mind, all this stuff you're talking about, you're doing this housing project, which is what we want, and you're talking about doing some additional things in the park, which is things we want, but you gotta take in consideration the cost of those improvements you're gonna make, the maintenance of them, the new employees for them, and all those things that come along with those new developments. So when we're doing our analysis, it's not just about those houses. It's about all the stuff you're talking about, in addition to the maintenance of it, the upkeeping of it, and the cost of the city and the community. So, again, I'm just saying, let's get a good, clear picture of what we're doing before we go out there and do it. That's all.
So the RFQ is gonna go out when?
It's out.
No, it's not out yet.
thought you
I'll
had it
bring
out.
the draft to the
We
next
have to
meeting
approve
for
the
you to
draft?
take a look, yeah, and make any changes or add any information you want me to add to it.
Then it goes out onto some,
And then we could put it I would send it to everybody I've had contact with. I also generated a list by looking up other developers that are currently building in surrounding cities.
How about Blue Book?
I mean, Blue Book, we could find somebody
Well, you're gonna
to
find a
send
lot of
that to.
people.
Yeah, I mean, we have a software system that kind of specializes in sending it to all the right people, and so it'll get advertised that way. We'll end up publishing it in the newspaper. And so ideally, it should generate a lot of interest for people who are
And
interested.
will this type of project be bonded? If not, it should be.
I mean, it just depends on how we move forward, because ultimately, it's gonna result in a developer agreement between the city and the person developing it. And so that would probably be addressed, not in the RFQ, but in the developer agreement, depending on how the construction and development is.
I'd like us to look
Negotiated.
more to the bonding situation because of any kind of ramifications go sideways. We don't get stuck in a situation where we're looking for money. This way, we
Okay.
have an insurance policy.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, 'cause
So
I've had enough of this other stuff.
So,
Well-
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, the RFQ, you're gonna bring a draft, what, the next meeting?
We have a bond,
Yes.
buddy, I'm telling
And
you.
then we approve it?
Yeah, approve it, provide any edits you want me to do, and then if you're okay with me making those edits and moving forward with it.
And then it goes out to like an MLS kind of thing where everybody, developers can look at it?
Basically.
Correct,
Okay,
yeah,
and then
some
at
type of
that point,
form, yeah.
you'll probably see some action as far as people contacting the city going, hey.
Oh, yeah, we'll get calls and we'll be answering questions.
Okay, so we got another meeting in June that goes out, so we're looking July, August, maybe we'll have some interest
In
or some.
July, August, we'll have submittals to review.
And then at that point, we start talking about, what's
Correct.
been presented to
Yeah,
the
what's
city.
being presented, taking a look at the.
Because I remember you said there was
drawings.
like 5 developers that had already contacted you about
Yeah.
it. Why did they do that before the RFQ went out?
So some of them, we've been in discussion from the very beginning. They were contacted by either members of the city or council.
Are
to
they
kind of
still in
dis-
play?
They are still all in play. One of them is just waiting for the RFQ to come out so that they can respond to it. The other ones I have coming in are bouncing off ideas, talking about other properties in town, as well as the city-owned property, getting a better feel for what they want to move forward
They
on.
haven't expressed any discouragement with lumber prices or anything going on in the economy? They're still
I
on
haven't
board?
had that. Surprisingly, nobody has really mentioned that, the ones that I've been working with this round.
They just
Okay.
pass it
Correct.
on, that's all. It
Mhm.
just gets passed on.
Yeah, so another item that would come up is because it's city-owned property, it's not actually annexed in the city, so at some point in time, which we've talked about, and I've mentioned that we're working with our municipal services review on at least obtaining, once we solidify the portion that needs to be annexed, either trying to get it annexed in as a priority so that it would be in city limits for them to develop, or I'd have to talk to legal counsel and probably LAFCO on, we've had presentations where they're open to the city continuing to own it and them leasing the property for the project and then lease with option to buy. And so we'll have to look at the pros and cons of that as well, something on the side, whether or not the city wants to continue to hold on to that property with the project, which it seems like just about all of them are open to that as well.
Well, we'd have to look at the ramifications.
Yeah, all that would eventually be negotiated into the developer's agreement.
The other
so.
thing to keep in mind too, if you're gonna annex a little bit of land, why should you annex the whole damn park?
Yeah, it just depends.
What the hell? I mean, you're gonna do it twice, it costs more.
It's a proof of services. I think if we did it as the open space, it'd be fine, but if we're
All one
planning
time.
on doing a project on it, you have to bring it in to match the project so that they know that the services are
The
gonna be
other
utilized.
question is, what's the effect of that, bringing the land into the city limits? Does that increase any burdens on us financially, the city?
Not financially, no.
Okay, good.
So the MSR, is that still on track,
That's
sort of for
moving forward.
January 2022, essentially?
Correct.
It's gonna go before LAFCO?
Yeah, I mean, we appear to be on schedule. We've been in contact with our consultant. He's been sending us all the information he needs. He advised that he will be reaching out to our city engineer to go over some other items that they have questions on. They've been in contact with the fire department to get calls on their call-outs and emergency response times. They have to contact all the agencies that operate in town.
So the MSR and that slight annexation of kind of cleaning up the lines, that's not a make or break for these projects, essentially, you're saying? It's just part of it, or what?
Well, specifically, if we
Because I've
were-
heard the developers don't want to build in the county, right? They want to build in a city,
They
right?
can't build in the county, so.
They can't build in the
So it's
county.
our understanding, with what we're being told by developers who are looking at properties that are outside of city limits, that the county is basically telling them, you could only build a house and an ADU. If you want to do anything more than that, because of how you're zoned, which is ag, usually everything around us is mostly zoned ag.
Right.
So it limits them being able to do anything but a house and an ADU, and possibly a junior ADU if they meet the right criteria. So they could either do that on their existing well and septic, but if they want to do anything else, which most of them want to do something else, they want to fully develop the property, then they tell them, we can't do anything for you, you need to go to the city and annex.
Okay, so
And so they're stuck.
The MSR is hugely critical in the development of that property.
Correct, and so what we did was we categorized cleanup items, properties that should probably have been annexed, or pieces of property where
Sphere
the
of
front
influence
yeah,
stuff.
the front portion was annexed, the back portion wasn't. We have a couple cleanup items that we put on priority. Then we have items that we think should come in this round, and if we're capable in cleaning up the lines and getting those properties in, bring those in.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a wish list. If we have extra space based on our capacity for water, sewer,
Right, 'cause
services, this is what we'd like to see come in.
This MSR is so interesting to me, because is that something that, obviously, it's gotta come before the council?
Of course, yeah, it'll come
Because we're talking about
here.
expanding our city boundaries.
Yeah, it'll go to planning commission, it'll go to council. It's gonna go before all of our boards for review and recommendation.
After it goes to LAFCO or before?
LAFCO's the final step.
LAFCO's the final thing. So
Correct.
we're talking about later this year, maybe we have those annexations or those cleanup lines presented to us, and we go, yeah, we like that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's how it would be proposed. He'll basically be able to get all the calculations with the information that he pulls from the agencies, compile all that information, get all our updated water and sewer information, and then move forward with what we think can be annexed.
Who's
what we
he, the
can.
city
This is
engineer?
our consultant, JB Anderson. That's who
Okay.
we're utilizing for the MSR.
So the developers probably wouldn't pull a trigger on something unless we get that through LAFCO.
Well, it depends, because I would have to double check, but if we continue to own the land, we could lease it out and let them construct. It's just
But they won't be in the city limits, right?
but it's our property, and I could double check on that. I haven't had a chance to
Okay.
consult with legal counsel on that, but there are exceptions to cities not having to do certain things if
Right.
they're the ones that own the land.
So my thing is that we own that land, except it's not necessarily or technically in the city limits, which I think is weird. And so that MSR, I think, is very important, that we clean up those lines, bring it within, so
that's
that
what
we
we're
have more
doing.
control over it.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do, is consolidate everything to where it's all working out together. So
Right.
when we do it all, it's all done at one time, as
Very
opposed
good.
to having coming
That's
back.
fine.
So that's why I
Alright.
put out the feeler for subdividing and doing all these things, because it might have to happen in order for the MSR to be completed and stuff,
Alrighty,
so.
so are we concluded now?
Yes.
All right. Let's move on to matters presented from the audience. The public may address the city council on any item in the agenda at the time the item is called. The public may also address the city council on any item not on the agenda that is within the authority of the city council. Each speaker is limited to a maximum of 5 minutes. Unused time may not be yielded to another speaker. The determination of whether an item is within the authority of the city council is discretionary decision made by the mayor. Okay, having said that, are there any, oh, look there.
Hey. I got to jump on
Already
it.
up there, yeah.
Now, I assume I can go to item 7, which is agendized, since that wasn't opened up, and I can speak to that. Okay. Councilman Bellinger hit on a very, very important item, and that's what, if you sell land, you're not going to be putting any money in the bank. You've got to give it back to the state, because that's where it came from. And-
The loan.
No,
That's not true.
No, that's not accurate on that property. We already gave that money back on
Yep,
that grant money.
when we did the
All the-
swap, Gary,
When we made the swap,
Uh-huh.
we paid it off.
we paid it off.
Oh, well
So
then
that
that's
land is
totally
not
different
tied to
then.
the Parks and Grants fund.
That's going to make a very big difference.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
You are welcome, Speedy. All right, is there anyone else this evening would like to come up and discuss anything that's on your mind or on the agenda? Just give us your name, please.
Terry Anderson.
Mr. Anderson.
Sent you guys all an email today. I thought we were gonna have this 162533 on the agenda for this time with regards to discussing the handrail.
It is. It's on item number 13 under
Didn't
administrative
see that.
matters.
Okay.
Yeah.
So shall I wait then?
That's up to
Yes.
you. Is that better to
Well,
wait?
yes, if he wants to speak on that, he needs to speak on when that matter
There
is
you go, buddy.
in front of the council.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Anyone else out there like to speak on anything else related or unrelated? Chance to get it off your mind? Okay, going, gone. All right, we're gonna roll on down to public hearings. All right, so we got the Sunrise Terrace Landscape Maintenance District hearing for the levy of assessments and confirmation of the diagram and assessments for the fiscal year 21-22.
Mayor
So-
Alves, I think that I probably ought to recuse myself from this
Yes.
one, and legal counsel would like me to leave the room?
That'd be best.
Okay.
All right, Robert's gone. All righty, so we open it up for public hearing.
So I'll give you the staff report.
Go ahead.
But staff is asking that you conduct a public hearing on the levy of the proposed assessment and adopt a resolution confirming the diagram and assessment for fiscal year 21-22. These assessments fund the electricity costs, wall maintenance, landscape maintenance within the neighborhood Children's Dinosaur Park and associated maintenance repair costs with the Sunrise Terrace development. This assessment district was formed in 1996. For fiscal year 21-22, no change is recommended with respect to the method of determining the assessments. The assessment per single-family residential unit is proposed at the $121.68 for this fiscal year, which is no increase from the prior year. The district's formation documents do not allow for an annual increase and have a maximum assessment of $121.68. In fiscal year 21-22, the collection of the capital replacement reserve fund for the cost of replacing playground equipment and amenities within the district has been reduced due to increase in direct cost. The established annual replacement cost is estimated at $582. For 21-22, the amount being collected is $212. The purpose of the fund is intended to have current residents enjoying and benefiting from the equipment, paying for the current year's depreciation. The fund also helps to ensure the ability to replace the equipment at the time replacement is needed and not having to close the park until funds have been collected. The current equipment has a slide that has been removed due to safety concerns. It is being proposed to use $2,900 from the capital replacement fund to replace the slide in the coming fiscal year. So attached to the staff report is the financial statement for fiscal year 19-20, the projected financial statements for the current fiscal year 2021, and then the final engineer's report and resolution for adoption.
Okay, now do we move into the, open up for public hearing?
Yes, you can.
All right, let's, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak, regarding this item? Doesn't look like it. So we're gonna close and bring it back to the council, and the council's gonna vote on it. Is that what's gonna happen?
Correct, or unless council has any comment or questions.
Are there any comments from council members regarding this matter?
Move to approve.
Move to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed, nay. We have a 4-0, and it's passed. So we're moving down. Shall we bring Robert back now?
Yes.
Okay. Alatira. Huh?
Westwood.
Oh, okay, I got carried away myself. All right.
So, similar to the Sunrise Landscape District, this is Westwood Country Landscape District. Same request is being made of the council to conduct a public hearing regarding the levy of the proposed assessment and adopt a resolution confirming the diagram and assessment for fiscal year 21-22. These assessment funds the maintenance and servicing of ground cover, shrubs, plants, trees, irrigation, drainage systems, graffiti removal, masonry walls, lighting facilities, playgrounds, equipment that was added in 2012, benches in 2012, and trash cans, and any associated appurtenant facilities. Services include all necessary service, operation, administration, and maintenance required to keep the above aforementioned improvements in a healthy, vigorous, satisfactory condition and proper working order. This district was formed in 2003. For fiscal year 21-22, no change is recommended with respect to the method of determining assessments. The assessment per single-family residential unit is proposed at $134.98, which is a slight decrease of $3.58 from the prior year assessment of $138.56. In fiscal year 21-22, staff is continuing the collection of the Capital Replacement Reserve Fund for the cost of replacing playground equipment and amenities within the district. The purpose of the fund is intended to have current residents enjoying and benefiting from the equipment, paying for the current year's depreciation of that equipment. The fund also helps to ensure the ability to replace the equipment at the time a replacement is needed and not having to close the park until funds have been collected. This district's formation documents allow for an annual increase of 3% on what could be the maximum assessment. For fiscal year 21-22, this would be $313. Again, we are only assessing the $134.98. Attached to the staff report, you will find the financial statements of fiscal year 19-20, projected financial statements for fiscal year 2021, and the final engineer's report and the resolution for adoption.
Okay,
Therefore, ready for the public hearing.
alrighty. We're gonna open up this matter for the public hearing. Anyone like to speak with regards to this matter may do so. Please just give us your name.
Yeah, my name's Casey. So I have
Casey,
a,
what's your last name?
Ryan,
Thank you.
I have a question. Do all, like, what is incorporated in this district? So where is this located?
So this district, Westwood District, is located back here behind Swanson and, is it Deborah? Hold on, and I'll get you a map, sorry.
And do all parks have a district?
Not all the parks in the city are part of a district, no.
Okay. I live over by Brentwood Estate.
And
There's
there
a
is
park
no
right there.
district over there.
Okay, because we had a couple slides that were removed, and I have little kids, and we'd like to see, slides put back in. And I don't know if there's any plans to do that or any costs that were estimated. There's a lot of people in our neighborhood that use that park, and I'm sure that we could raise the funds if it was a matter of not having the funds available. And so I'm curious as to what the process would be to address that slide issue.
So, I know that in the past, the dinosaur park was an example in the previous district where getting replacement parts has been difficult. So we were able to talk with, we found a source for the dinosaur park. So we can have our public works ask about that in Brentwood, and then we can see if we have that source available. Otherwise, there is a process that you could submit an application or a request to put the item on the council agenda. And we can do that at a future council meeting then.
So if you were to get an estimate for the slide, could we find out how much that would be and then just set up a GoFundMe or something?
Yeah, I mean, we could look into that then, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. How long has the slide been down over there?
The ones in Brentwood, I know that there's been a couple down from there for quite a while.
Quite a while.
Yes,
And Brentwood, I was trying to think, what's the street over there?
Mission and Justin?
yes.
Mission and Justin? Yeah, yeah.
Yosemite's right there.
Yosemite,
Yeah.
Justin, and Mission's on the north, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we still in public comment, or?
Yeah.
We're not done yet. We're still in the
Yeah,
hearing.
public hearing.
Is there anyone else like to speak? All right, having no one else come up, we're gonna close the public hearing. We'll bring it back to the council for comment.
So in regards to Mr. Ryan's comment about the slides, I feel your pain. I'm aware of the dinosaur park situation, and when you hear about the costs involved, it seems as simple as let's replace the slide, but it can get more complicated than that when you have public equipment and you need to replace a piece of it with essentially qualifying equipment, and the costs can get crazy exorbitant. I mean, it stupefied me, I'll say that. I'm really glad that we've found some replacement parts that we might be able to put for that one. But I would encourage anybody that has an issue with the parks, if they're in a district, to get it on the agenda, bring it back. That's kind of the best method so that we can discuss it and figure out the best solution if the equipment needs replacing. That would be my suggestion. Yeah.
All right, any other comment? If not, I'll accept the motion.
Move on staff's recommendation.
And okay, do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Let's, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, carries 5-0. Move on down to Bellaterra.
I will be
You leaving? Nice seeing you.
myself.
All right, Mr. Jeff's out of here. Get out.
To the right.
All right, go ahead, staff, please.
All right, so staff again is requesting the council to conduct a full public hearing on the levy of the proposed assessment, adopt a resolution confirming the diagram and assessment for fiscal year 21-22. This assessment funds the electricity costs and maintenance of landscape, irrigation, drainage systems, pedestrian and bicycle paths, and associated maintenance repair costs within the Bellaterra development. This assessment district was formed in 2001. For fiscal year 21-22, no changes recommended with respect to the method of determining assessments. The assessment per single-family residential is proposed to be $475.08 for this fiscal year. The district has drawn down on its reserves due to increased expenses in water and the landscape contract. The district had a change in the landscape contract in March of 2021 that included a significant increase. The monthly contract did go from $11.95 to $24.55. These additional expenses have caused an assessment increase of $163 from the prior year assessment of $311. In fiscal year 21-22, staff is continuing the collection of the Capital Reserve Replacement Fund for costs of replacing the playground equipment and amenities within the district. The district's formation documents allow for an annual increase of 3% on the maximum assessment for fiscal year 21-22, which is at $619. Again, we are not assessing the $619. That's the maximum that we could assess, but we are only assessing the $475. Attached to the staff report, you will find the financial statements for fiscal year 19-20, projected financial statements for 2021, the final engineer's report, and the resolution for adoption. That's it, so
All
you
right,
can, yeah.
we'll
do
open
the-
that up to public hearing. Anyone who'd like to speak on this matter, please come forth now. Okay, seeing Mad Rush is over, we'll bring it back to the council for discussion.
I just have a quick question. So just for the sake of those in the audience as well as myself, because I'm still a little naive on these things, landscape districts, these are created because we have the city and then we have certain districts that are created. Can you just explain really quickly to me a little summary of how these landscape districts are created and what their function is?
So, in past years, cities found that property tax didn't cover for services for parks that were put in for those maintenances or any additive aesthetics, I guess for lack of better words, like if you have the extra grass on between the sidewalk and the walkways and the green paths or the green area in Bellaterra or a park, property tax doesn't cover for the maintenance of that. So cities have began forming these landscape maintenance districts so that they could maintain those areas that the developers were putting in.
Which include only some parks, not all parks.
Correct, because at some point, well, when was Sunrise, was in 96 was the first time that the city started doing a district. So from that point, they decided, that was something when a developer came in and developed a subdivision, that was part of it so that the city could continue maintenance of the existing parks and then those parks also.
Because the property taxes from that subdivision wouldn't pay for
All of those
those
services.
extra things, the extra grass and necessarily the park. So you created another area that you would levy a tax on to cover that cost, correct?
Correct.
How many do we have total in Escalon? 5?
We have 5.
5?
One of them is a little bit different. It's called a benefit assessment district, so it covers the storm drainage and street sweeping in that subdivision.
So if you do live in one of those areas, you will be assessed another tax on top of your property taxes for that, the maintenance of that area.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That's just for clarification.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, any more discussion?
No, I was just gonna add to that, and that's why I think the Brentwood area came in about 90 or 91, just before that whole era started. And yeah, it would have been great, to have it included, because then you have things like, your swings and slides taken care of like that. It would have been, a good thing, but it's,
I'll accept the motion.
move on to staff's recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4-0. All right, let's move on down to the next one. Estates.
Musical chairs.
Oh,
I see you, Dave.
To the penalty box.
So just for the audience information, council members are leaving the room because those districts directly affect where they live. So they can't vote on the items.
So essentially, the council members are abstaining and leaving the room from the discussions due to a potential conflict of interest. The conflict of interest being they live in this district, so they would step out, they're abstaining and stepping out. So there would be no conflict of interest in them discussing or being part of the discussion and voting of something that they have a personal interest in.
Very good.
All right, so this is for the Estates Landscape and Lighting Maintenance District. Staff is asking council to conduct a full public hearing on the levy of the proposed assessment, adopt a resolution confirming the diagram and assessment for fiscal year 21-22. These assessments fund ground cover, shrubs, plants, trees, irrigation, graffiti removal, masonry walls, lighting facilities, and associated appurtenant facilities. Services include all necessary service operations, administration, and maintenance required to keep the above aforementioned improvements in a healthy, vigorous, and satisfactory condition. This assessment district was formed in 2006. For fiscal year 21-22, no change is recommended with respect to the method of determining assessments. The assessment per single-family residential unit is proposed to be $402.32. The district has drawn down on its reserve due to increased expenses in water and landscape contract. The district had a change in landscape contract in March of 2021 that included a significant increase. The monthly contract went from $270 to $670. These additional expenses have caused an increase in the assessment of $136.90 from the prior year assessment of $265.42. The district's formation documents allow for an annual increase in the maximum assessment per unit of April annualized CPI of the urban consumers for the San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose area, or 3%, whichever is greater, without having to trigger a Prop 218 ballot procedure. The CPI increase from April 2020 to April 21 is 3.8%. The adjusted maximum assessment for fiscal year 21-22 is $714.84 based on the 3.8%. Attached to the staff report, you will find financial statements from fiscal year 19-20 and projected financial statements for 2021, the final engineer's report, and resolution for adoption.
All right, we're gonna move it out to the public for an open hearing. Anyone who's interested in commenting on it may do so now. And the crowd is not there. Okay, so let's move it back to the staff and staff communication. Anything going on, gentlemen, you wanna talk about?
So the 714.84, that's per household or total?
That is the maximum that we could charge in that district.
Per
So,
what? Per household?
per household.
Per year?
Per what is defined as a EDU, or not an EDU.
So
Yeah.
it went from 270 to 714?
No. So the 270 to 670 was the maintenance contract, the landscape maintenance contract. The 714 is the increase in what we can annually charge, but we are not charging the 714, we are charging $402,
Why?
32 cents, because that's what we need to cover the cost in that, the
So we're not
landscape
charging
area.
the maximum that we're
Not
allowed.
charging the
Charging the
maximum.
minimum burden on the taxpayer.
Correct.
So it's
yes.
an addition, it's, what is it, for?
It's 402.32, but that is an increase from the prior year that was 265.42.
Okay, and is that a line item that goes on their, where do they pay that? Is that on their?
It's
water-
on their property tax,
In their property tax?
yeah, and
Okay.
it's a line item on there.
Okay,
Crummage, the deal on those districts is they can't charge any more money than they actually use.
well, good.
I'm just telling you, that's how that works.
Okay.
You're allowed a certain amount of reserves for cash flow reasons,
Okay.
but you are limited on
And that increase, is that an annual increase? Are all of these districts subject to like a CPI or a?
All the districts, with the exception of Sunrise, have built-in inflators in them. They can be increased annually. The maximum amount can be increased annually. So.
We only charge what the
But what is
actual cost is.
correct, mhm.
Which is a result of contracts with landscapers and et cetera.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So when they stay flat, or we have actually seen them decrease,
Correct.
so
Yeah.
it just
Okay,
Yeah, that's rare though.
it's rare.
all right.
All right, any more discussion? Well, if not, I'll accept the motion.
I move on staff's recommendation.
All right, we have a motion.
Second?
We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Say an aye.
Aye.
Carries 4-0. Okay, let's go down to the last one, the estates benefit.
So the Estates Benefit Assessment District, staff is asking council to conduct a full public hearing on the levy of the proposed assessment, adopt a resolution confirming the diagram and the assessment for fiscal year 21-22. The assessment funds street lighting, storm drainage facilities, and associate appurtenant facilities. Services include all necessary service, operation, administration, and maintenance required to keep the above-mentioned improvements in a satisfactory working condition. This district was formed in 2006. For fiscal year 21-22, no change is recommended with respect of the method of determining assessments. The assessment per single-family residential unit is proposed to be $90.16, which is actually a decrease of $20.50 from the prior year assessment of $110.
It's gotta be a mistake.
In fiscal year 21-22, staff is continuing the collection of capital replacement reserve fund for the cost of replacing the improvements and equipment within the district. The purpose of this fund is intended to have current residents enjoying and benefiting from the equipment, which in this place is a storm pump. This also ensures that at the time replacement is needed, sufficient funds are available to replace the equipment with no interruption of service. The district's formation documents allow for the annual increase in the maximum assessment per unit based on the CPI, which for this district is the April to April at the 3.8%. So the maximum assessment that could be charged in fiscal year 21-22 is the 223.26. But again, we are not charging that. We are charging $90.16. Attached to the staff report, you'll find the financial statements for fiscal year 19-20, projected financial statements for 2021, and the final engineer's report and the resolution for adoption.
Okay,
Yes.
we're gonna open the
Same
public
district.
hearing. For those who are interested, come on down and give us your name and you can have your say. Stacy, come on back.
Casey Ryan again. I have just a question about the annual increase. So that 3.8 is assessed on the original, what it was, so the 110, or what is it?
So each year, these districts are you establish what the maximum could be. So it's based on what the prior year's maximum was set at.
And that maximum can increase by 3.8.
That, yeah, it was increased by the 3.8%. So it varies each year. So here's this is the chart up there yeah, so the adjusted maximum assessment in that column there, that is what we could do for a maximum. This annual assessment is what we are actually charging. But the district, when it was formed, set what you could do as a maximum. And the CPI is meant to keep up with the cost of service.
Okay, thank you.
All right, is there anyone else who'd like to comment on the item? Okay, not seeing anyone coming up. We're gonna bring it back to the council, close the public hearing. Gentlemen, what's your pleasure?
So I think what Mr. Ryan brought up is a good point. They can increase to 3.8, right? That's the legal thing that you can increase.
Right.
However, the city is required to only increase it or decrease it depending upon their cost of providing that service. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the annual maximum is, we can't
It's
charge
kind of
above that.
subjective, yeah.
Yeah, well, we can't charge above that, but you're still supposed to charge at what it costs to maintain that district.
Sure. So the adjusted max is maybe a minimum or a
It's a
maximum, but what you're actually charging is totally different.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, so I'll accept that motion.
Move on staff's recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 4-0. All right, we're down to administrative matters.
We'll bring Councilman Bellinger back in.
All right, if he behaves.
Can't believe you didn't fight to keep my costs down.
Well, sorry, buddies. You jacked it up twice.
All right, thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
So this is the continuation of the item for 1625, 1633 Yosemite Avenue. So some background and discussion. In 2019, the city received correspondence from the property owner at 1625/1633 Yosemite Avenue requesting a handicap parking space in front of her home. Students from the high school were continuously parking in front of her house, which made it difficult for her to park her car in front of her home. Staff discussed this request with council and inquired whether the council would be interested in establishing a blue curb policy that would address these types of requests. At that time, it was the consensus of council to not move forward with a policy. Staff had followed up with the property owner and advised that the city did not have a policy for blue curbs and that her request was not processed. Staff also advised that if a blue curb was painted, an ADA-compliant sidewalk would be required on the Yosemite side of the property, which is the responsibility of the property owner to install. In May 2021, the same property owner's son-in-law came before the city council requesting the painting of a blue curb/disabled parking space in front of the home, as well as permission to install a handrail off their property and into the public right-of-way. The resident advised both staff and council that it is difficult for his mother-in-law to get over the curb due to their property's slope in the front yard. Council expressed interest in possibly adopting a policy for the installation of a blue curb disabled parking space on the public street. Therefore, staff has provided a draft policy for consideration. Regarding the handrail request, the area where the resident desires to install the handrail is referred to as the public right-of-way or easement, which is outside of the resident's private property lines where an ADA-compliant sidewalk would be installed in the future. The city's nuisance abatement chapter in the Escalon Municipal Code prohibits obstructions in the public easement. City staff reached out to other cities to inquire whether they have established policies on residential on-street parking spaces for disabled persons, whether sidewalk is required in order to install the disabled parking space, and whether they have ever given permission to residents to install a handrail in the public easement and obtain the following information. Most of the cities have a policy for on-street parking spaces for disabled persons. All of the cities install these spaces where the request meets the policy criteria and where adjacent sidewalks are located. None of the cities received requests to install handrails for a disabled person in the public right-of-way. 2 of the cities stated that they would be open to considering some type of revocable permit or license for a handrail if it could be warranted and installed without being a nuisance in the public right-of-way. And they would also require the property owner to both install the handrail themselves and maintain them, including taking all full liability for them. The city also reached out to the city's risk management claims adjuster, and they recommended that the city not move forward with allowing the installation of handrails in the public right-of-way. They've explained that allowing the construction of a handrail in the public right-of-way creates an exposure or a potential loss for the city, even in the event that the property owner agrees to take on its responsibility and liability. Currently, it can be argued that the area is in its natural state. Addition of a handrail not only conflicts with the city's code requirements, but it also upgrades or improves the area, which tampers with the current existing state. This opens the area to additional ADA improvements that are needed, which would also address the slope issues and missing sidewalks on the property. Handrails would also carry the potential to become an attractive nuisance. Risk management continued to advise that the city has no obligation or legal requirement to address this issue, and continues to encourage that the city limit its exposure by continuing to encourage and/or require the property owner to address their concerns on their private property in accordance with the city's regulation. The city attorney agrees that the city's risk management opinion and recommendation for the same reasons. The loading and unloading of a disabled person should be accommodated on-site on the resident's private property where possible. The property has a walkway from the front door down to the street. However, the property owner has indicated that the slope of the private walkway is the main issue. However, the property owner has not presented any other ways that the property can be modified or the slope can be mitigated. Other improvement options are available that can be applied on the private property to assist the disabled resident. Staff recommends that the property owner modify his private property in order to park in their driveway or garage and install a handrail from the driveway towards the front door in order to assist his mother-in-law to the front door. This would remove the resident from the parking in the street, as well as not create an obstruction in the public easement. We did attach a draft policy for the residential on-street parking spaces for disabled, and it's a accumulation of the cities that were contacted. We did speak with Riverbank, Oakdale, Milpitas, because they had a very popular plan. And then we also contacted the city of Sacramento because they are much larger and usually have a lot more requests of these types. And then we also included pictures of the location that were provided to staff and council at the last meeting. And then the applicant also did submit some photographs of other pictures of other areas in the town that were submitted to council, and we did upload those in case you wanted to look at those as well. And as you're aware, the applicant is in the audience, so if you have any questions from the applicant, Mr. Anderson, you could ask him as well.
Okay, Mr. Anderson, would you like to come and speak? You've heard what we had to say. What do you got to say? Take care.
Well, all we're trying to do is help my mother-in-law, number one.
I think I understand that.
And you keep talking about the obstructions in the pathway, and inside that pathway right there are plenty of obstructions that the city have there, okay? I've sent staff and the council pictures of even fences blocking pathways. And the difference between me and all those pictures I sent you guys is I came to ask you for permission. I just didn't put it up. Where you're citing these code violations and things like that from the city attorney in this EAS or whatever it is, EMC. But you've got plenty of them around town. And you're allowing some people to get away with it, but you just won't allow me to address a handrail issue. Not a big deal.
Well, I wish I had an easy answer for you.
Yeah.
I don't. There probably are ways to mitigate this, probably none of which you're interested in, but there are solutions to the problem that don't involve a rail. From my perspective, and don't take this in the wrong way.
No, I won't.
But you could put a driveway up through there and drop her off at the front door.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one option, which would not involve dealing with any sidewalks or anything else. It is your property, You can pretty much do that, no problem.
Okay.
I wish there was an easy solution. I'm not in total disagreement with you, but we do have obligations because of our risk management group and all the other things. If we do something that goes against them, we do have consequences. So I'm not sure really what else to say. Councilman, does anyone like to add anything, or?
I'm just wondering if we went forward with a policy similar to which, in terms of the blue line, I mean.
Blue curb.
The
Blue
blue
curb.
curb. Blue curb. Anyway, if we went forward with a policy like that, I mean, I think just in a general sense, I know other towns have that, and.
They do actually have this?
Yeah,
Okay.
and that might be something beneficial to a lot of other, to this town too. I mean, hopefully it would create some degree of, meaning in the middle, but I think also in the bigger picture of this community, it would be something that might be a fair thing to do, because I'm sure that your mother-in-law is probably not the only person.
No, she's not, but,
spot.
I mean, I don't understand why, since we're right across the street from the high school, why we just can't get a sidewalk put in by the city,
Yeah.
My neighbor across the street had to put one in because he was doing some upgrades on his property. And he says that the stretch he did, which is about the same as what's in front of my yard, is only $1,600. That's labor and material included. So I don't understand why, especially right across the street from the high school, where kids walk through my yard all day long.
How does that work with a sidewalk in that spot? Who'd pay
So
for it?
we pay prevailing wage,
Boo.
and so that's typically why installing sidewalks is put on the property owner to do, because they get a much better deal for doing it. Also with cities, we put out projects for public building, or bidding, excuse me. And so we typically do larger projects because you get more curb length and more sidewalk in for the cost. And yeah, anything over, is it 500 or 1,000 now? Is it $1,000?
$1,000.
Yeah, requires prevailing wage, and so something that's 1,600, for his neighbor is gonna be more like $6,000 for us,
Right.
just for that small portion.
What would Mr. Anderson have to deal with if he wanted to do it in terms of, what would you have to deal with in terms of permits, that kind of stuff?
So it's a basic encroachment permit, for people who install their own sidewalk, at their expense, we waive the permit fee. So his neighbor didn't pay for a permit fee to do that work, correct?
And I'm also seeing that slope right at the very end.
Yeah.
And I can see that's a bit of a kicker too.
It is a kicker.
And a sidewalk would probably cut the vast majority of that slope off, I'd
Right.
imagine.
So are you
Just as a
suggesting the
thought.
sidewalk's gonna resolve the issue?
I don't think a sidewalk would resolve the height issue. You have
I
to
don't
regrade
either.
the property.
Nope.
It's not gonna change anything. It might have put a step there after the
That's about
After
it.
the curb, you're gonna have a step up.
Yeah, can she handle a
But the
step?
sidewalk is gonna have to be sloped at the right
Steps into
angle.
her house, yeah.
Yeah.
So what does the blue curb do? I mean, is there something here that I'm missing, that if we put the blue curb there?
Well, during school, not right now because school's out, but during the school year, I mean, we got people parking in front of our
So the blue curb
garages,
is the-
parking in front of
Is a parking
everywhere.
space for handicap.
Yes.
Correct.
And
But
is
it
that
would be
some-
open to anybody who has the handicap.
But is
Correct.
staff open to that?
No, because there's no
There's a sidewalk.
sidewalk.
Okay, so if we had a sidewalk, then the blue thing would be okay.
Correct.
Then if you guys implemented a blue curb program, it could be up. Go ahead.
Let me clarify that. There are two things happening here on this agenda item. One is this blue curb policy that gives the citizens or disabled person the ability to get a blue curb
Parking
handicap spot, not for themselves, but at least placed in front of their home when they don't have a sufficient parking on their property. Right, if you look through the draft policy, this only applies when somebody actually doesn't have a driveway, or, the driveway doesn't meet their needs because it's too small for whatever reason. So in that case, it makes sense to provide the ability for a resident to say, hey, I need a handicap spot, at least a blue one, a handicap spot in front of my property. There are certain requirements that the draft policy addresses. One of them is, first of all, it has to be because your own property couldn't fit the bill, right? There is no driveway, or you couldn't be modified to make it handicap accessible for parking. So the one thing I did want to clarify from what the draft policy says, there must be a sidewalk if it's necessary for that person's vehicle there. In other words, If that person needs a sidewalk there to get in on the passenger side, and there's no sidewalk, the blue curb, they don't meet the conditions of the blue curb policy. But let's say a disabled person doesn't need to get on the side, they don't have a wheelchair access or something, and they literally just need a place to park in front of their property because they can't walk down the street because, you know, they use a walker or a cane, but they're actually the driver. The policy allows for a blue curb in that situation. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is this sidewalk issue, you know, we're trying to make this as the draft policy was trying to grab the most amount of people, to make it available to the most amount of disabled people. So, yeah, there's a little bit of difference here, but if somebody doesn't need a sidewalk and just needs access to get into their car in front of their house because it's not available, because of their geographic conditions of their house or driveway, it's possible. So I don't want to think here this whole sidewalk thing must be required as drafted right now. I mean, I'm
But it
saying-
is part of this draft.
It's part of the draft under section, maybe I'll just point to it.
I have a question on that too.
Yeah, on Exhibit A, where it says passenger side, if you go down to the second to last bullet point, it says vehicle entry. In case where passenger side entry of the applicant's vehicle is required, a sidewalk that meets city standards and ADA requirements is required, and the sidewalk is in front of the proposed disabled parking space, should be unobstructed or mitigated. So, again, this is saying, yes, you have to have a sidewalk, but only if you need it to get in and out of your car on the passenger side.
Right.
There are some
What about
disabled
both
people
signs?
that don't need that, they're actually going to the driver's side, and it works.
And this is why I support this policy with that caveat taken out about the requirement regarding a sidewalk. You know, I mean, and with all due respect, I'm not just thinking of your situation.
Right.
Again, I am thinking of trying to capture the greatest amount of people that
Right.
this might be able to benefit
Right.
around here.
I have a question. You touched on this point, something about driveways and garages. In this specific instance, this house has a two-car garage.
Does.
It looks like a short driveway. Because it has a garage, does that take them out of the running for a blue curb then, because of that garage on the property?
Well,
Because technically, it's a garage for a vehicle.
Right, and if the
Notwithstanding, my truck doesn't fit in my garage, so that's another issue, but
Doesn't- Ours
how
don't
does
fit
that
in there
work
either.
with this gentleman's exact situation? We get to this point, and it's like, well, you have a garage, now we have to deny it. I don't want to do that. I'm just,
Yeah, Our
how does
cars
that
won't,
happen?
our cars won't fit in there.
So the, part of the application, the citizen needs to submit a garage impact statement, which is basically them explaining why their garage doesn't accommodate the handicapped vehicle or the needs of that handicapped person. So in this person's case, there's not been any information presented regarding whether, because there is a driveway and there is a garage, but there's
Right.
no, so theoretically, the blue curb wouldn't apply because they have a place to park on their property for a disabled person. And until the applicant actually submits information that says, no, our garage and driveway doesn't work because it's only 3 feet, you know, we don't have enough room for, you know, either
egress, if you
a
will, with
ramp or something to that effect. So if that's the case, it's in the application and then it might apply. And it does state in part of the policy too, you know, in California, we all use our garage as a storage space. Well, a lot of us do. So the policy also doesn't apply if hey, I don't have we don't have a space in our garage because I'm using it for storage. Sorry, that's not a reason you should get a blue curb painted out in front. It actually, because you have a means to satisfy that disabled need. So that was addressed in the draft policy.
Can't the city just say, hey, we should probably put a blue curb in that area? Why do we need an applicant?
We don't have any handicap parking on that street at all.
It's all on the school property.
Well, I think
You typically see it in private parking lots. You typically don't see it in terms of case for applicants for public streets.
There's nothing prohibiting us from doing that though, right?
there is nothing prohibiting you from doing that. There is off-street parking has requirements of certain number of stalls must be handicapped.
And we don't,
On-street parking does not.
And we don't care if there's sidewalk there or not, because we can make the decision on our own as the applicant that we want a blue curb there.
Well, so there is an ADA guide out there regarding street parking, on-street parking, which discusses curbs next to ADA. Because when you put a blue spot in on-street parking, there does need to be minimum size for it. The painting has to be a certain size, and I believe there is a strong recommendation, I'm not sure if it's a requirement, to actually have a curb next to, an ADA compliant curb next to that blue park.
I have a
Like where
qu-
you're going with that, Jeff. Can we just put one in front of every school that we have in this town? That just happens to be where we put the one in front of the high school.
But there's only really, realistically, there's three options here. You put a driveway. If you're pouring concrete, why would you pour a sidewalk for the city? You can just pour yourself a driveway up to the front door.
Bingo.
You can bring the car right up to the door. That's one, and that puts it on you. Two, you could put a temporary handrail in there without the blessing of the city, and if you get caught, you get some sort of a corrective, measure for that,
Like everybody else?
yeah, so some sort of a handrail that you plug in.
Yeah.
And then you remove it. I don't know how often she goes out to the car or not, but if it's just a temporary thing that you put in there and take out, it's in violation of our risk management and city attorney, and it's not something that we would bless, but, you're a property owner, you have options.
Yeah.
Or, based on not having a blue curb policy, but having the ability to put one in there, we could paint a blue curb. I don't think that really accomplishes ultimately what you're trying to do. It does give you a parking spot for the.
It does. There's been a couple times she's had to walk a block just to get home.
Yeah, and that's not, it could be somebody else with a handicap
Right.
placard parks in.
That's fine.
that spot. But, that's something that we can, if there's nothing prohibiting us from doing that, that's something that we could do, and then we can plan on upgrading sidewalks. I don't know that the sidewalk has to come before the blue curb.
Right. Well, I would defer to the city engineer on whether that spot would meet for the qualifications for a blue curb.
She drive occasionally,
Yes,
so she would just need to get to the driver's side.
she is on the driver's side.
So I had a question. But the blue curb doesn't necessarily solve the issue that you're looking for,
It solves the parking issue during the school year.
but not the getting up of.
No, it doesn't.
And the main thing you came for was,
I came for both.
well, for both, but which one's more important, the handrail or the blue curb?
They're both important, but you're not gonna give me the handrail. I'll take the blue curb.
Yeah, that's where I think I'm coming from. I think we meet you halfway. I mean, how you
Yeah.
do the handrail, hey, however works.
I mean, help her some way.
I'm looking at this like, I'm looking at these obstructions. You've made a great point. You've got diagrams. We're looking at this. You have a PG&E pole there, which takes an act of God to move those things.
Well, that's right on the line.
Well,
of the
yeah, but
easement.
you have these other signs,
Yeah,
and I know that everybody up here, especially me, we want to help you out. We want to find something to do, but there's the constraints on us as well. But I'm with Councilman Swift. I mean, what can we do? How can we meet halfway? What can we do? The blue curb.
Well, it also sounds like we start by enacting a policy for the blue curb.
Right, so we've provided a draft policy for you guys,
Right.
gentlemen, to consider for a blue curb policy.
And like Mayor Pro Tem,
Requires a sidewalk though.
right. Well, we strike those words out of there.
It doesn't.
No,
Because
not-
she drives. So she just needs to get to the driver's.
That's true, she drives.
Oh, because it's only for the ones with ambulance.
But the policy also,
Amble.
we have all these other problems with the garage and all that kind of stuff. Well, we don't have a policy, so we can approve it or disapprove it.
Well, but we could do that whether if we have a policy or not. It's our call, right?
We'd have to have a.
That's
vote,
a test
gentlemen.
case.
I'd have to have a motion and some
So,
voting.
so,
Well,
I would propose that we have the city engineer take a look at that spot and tell us where that blue curb would be and how long it
Can you
should be.
talk into the microphone? I don't think so. Sorry.
I propose that we have the city engineer take a look at that curb and where would a blue curb go, that would accommodate this homeowner and that particular area for off-school parking for handicapped people. So they can.
So how is that now? Is that a motion or is that a request on staff? What is it?
You
Well,
would say
if
you
it's a-
proposed,
I-
which is
I-
close to a move.
Yeah, well, if I'm gonna make a motion, it's to paint a blue curb in front of the house. So,
There you go.
I
You know,
think we want the engineer's report to say whether it will comply or not comply.
or we can just say, paint a blue curb, city engineer, figure out
How to
what
do
it's
it.
gotta,
Do
how
it.
long it's gotta be. and-
Specifications.
Yeah,
Okay, well, let's go with that one.
okay, that's my motion.
Mark,
His motion
What's the
is-
motion? Say it again?
Motion
Back up a
is
second.
to have a curb
Install a blue
Painted
curb in front of that
per
particular
the
residence.
specifications of the engineer. Is that correct?
Can you,
Mayor Pro Tem, is that correct?
you
Yeah.
both were talking at the same time, so please.
And I do want to point out, we haven't opened this to public comment yet. We've been discussing with the applicant, but we actually haven't heard from the rest of
Okay,
the
well, we'll
public here.
get that
So we
input
have,
too.
so we have a
So-
section of that that's
so-
red at the corner, correct?
Which probably needs to be repainted, so.
And then we'll have a section of blue, so
So
I'm
here's,
looking at Google Earth
We
here,
can't move forward
sorry.
with the motion till we have public
This looks
hearing.
like it's red to this
I mean,
point.
public input.
okay, but can I state the motion though first and then open
You
it up?
can.
From here to
Okay,
some
listen up, guys.
All right.
legitimate distance, whatever
Gentlemen,
they say,
please.
30 foot or whatever.
Based on a perceived and necessary need for handicap parking in the area of Yosemite that's depicted in these pictures as part of the presentation, and the fact that there isn't handicap parking off the school property, I think it's in the benefit of the community to put a blue curb for handicap parking in the vicinity of the corner of Stanislaus and Yosemite on the residential side. And I would propose that the city engineer design that blue curb and give us the specifications for installation.
Okay, now, stop. That is the motion. We're gonna hold off on the voting until we have input from the audience, correct?
Correct.
Okay, then, let's open it up to the audience. Anybody out there like to have a comment regarding the item? And
Barbara Willis, 425 Sultana Way. This is peripherally connected. Councilmember Crumick brought up that there are people in this community who are aging out and infirm and needing to move elsewhere because they can no longer live here in town. Today, I had to take someone to Kaiser. There was a car in front of his house, the person who gives care, and when I came back with the patient, there was a second car there that belonged to the physical therapist. He's using a walker, the patient is. It's hard on the driveway because the walker tends to want to go too fast. And so he's got to have the brakes on, and it would have been real handy if there had been a blue spot there that somebody else would not have occupied for me to pick him up and then drop him back off. So in addition to this specific location, yeah, maybe a policy to expand where blue curbs can be painted. We also have neighbors, the man is in his 90s, the woman in her 80s, they're having to leave Escalon because he has had surgery and she is infirm. And the same situation, there are people that come and go and they don't always have a prime spot in front of their house to pick them up and drop them off. So, but if there were a blue curb there, nobody else would take the spot. And I drive a placard when I take them, so I can park there and pick them up and drop them off. Also, Councilmember Legero, what you said, the American Legion puts in flags downtown when there's a holiday. We have the pipes in the ground. So all we have to do is put the flags in those pipes, keep them erect, and then pull them out. So if there were metal posts in the ground alongside the sidewalk, and you had a handrail, put it in when it's in need, take it out when it's not, it does seem like an option.
we talked about
Exactly.
telescopic as well as what you just suggested. And what you're referring to is sleeves in the ground. The sleeves would be available for whatever apparatus you wanted to install there. Yeah, we talked about those options, and also telescopic, where it would come out and go back.
I guess who would be installing that and who would be pulling it back out as that mother-in-law goes in and out of that property? If she lives on her own, that's gonna be permanent.
Well,
It could be pulled up and put in the back of the car like a wheelchair or a walker can be, or if
I
someone
don't think
else,
you're gonna expect that resident to do that, though.
well, or else put it, like the walker today, put it back in the garage and then get it back out when you bring the patient back home. But the blue curb policy, I think we should have.
Well, it's something we should look into and define in a way that it doesn't become chaotic, because it could become chaotic.
Well, and who knows how long these people are gonna live in these homes, you know, if you put in a blue curb,
Right,
And they
but I
move-
think what you look more towards in my thinking is that one in a certain amount of square feet area wouldn't be bad regardless of who's living there. You know, I think
Certain
every
neighborhood
block should
areas,
have one person.
Certain central locations kind of thing.
Yeah, I think so, within reason. We don't get out there and putting in 50, 20, 200, whatever. I mean, we need some, obviously, and then we should consider when we put them in, not to overdo it.
well, and here, we're talking about senior housing, we're talking about helping the seniors in the
Sure,
community.
sure.
So it would help them also
Absolutely.
to,
No, I think it's something of
accommodate the
strong
parking.
consideration.
These folks
Absolutely.
that you pick up and stuff, they don't have, most of these homes don't have driveways or effectively to get in and out of with these folks, or?
They've got driveways, and I think a comment was made about a cluttered garage, they've had to get rid of their vehicles, they can't drive. But the hardship is the slant on the driveway.
Yeah.
A level sidewalk is easier for them.
Yeah. How do they get from the sidewalk to the house? It's the same pitch
Walker,
from one point to
No.
another. I'm just curious.
because no.
Okay, well, it's something to consider.
All right, thank
Barbara.
you.
Is there anyone else like to add to the conversation? Feel free to come up and give us your opinion.
Gary Haskin, that works for the situation now. What happens if these people move out and a young family moves in?
We just touched on that, Gary.
They
What we
can't,
said,
they can't park in front of their house?
no, what we said was, you could have, you didn't want to overdo it, but we could put some in certain parts of the town in an area, not one in every corner, but, you know, and it wouldn't hurt to have it. I mean, you know, there's people that out there that are handicapped that.
Oh, yeah, I'm not arguing that, but
Yeah. You
fact
don't wanna
is,
overdo it, Gary.
if you go to buy a house, you got a blue curb and you're saying, well, I just lost my street parking.
Well,
Right.
it depends.
Is there something that could be put in the ordinance that could be adjusted later on down the line?
Well, I think,
I'll point, Mr. Mayor, if I
go
may.
ahead.
I'll point out that the draft policy indicates it's 1 year,
Oh, it's a one-year
and
permit?
they have to renew, they have to show that they actually
Oh,
live
good, I
there.
like that even better.
That takes care of it.
Bingo.
And it also indicates that there's only a certain number of handicaps, disabled spots per street,
There
or
we
actually
go.
it says there's no others within 500 feet, so
There you
it's
go.
not.
This
gonna
is
be-
already on the books, this is already.
No, this is,
It's in the draft.
Oh.
Exhibit A is our draft policy.
Don't,
I didn't want to say anything, but.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so is there any more input? Come on, anybody at all? Okay, the end of the input. Now we're gonna bring it back to our council for final action.
Well, I've got a question. I know you're still waiting for a second on this, but I wanted to ask the question of Mark. To do this or to do anything else, are we at an advantage liability-wise to have an actual policy in place?
Well, we need a policy in place so it's not subjective.
Right.
But number one, it's just so you don't get these random requests and sit here and have these arguments about this street and that street, and this council is actually acting as the engineer and as everything else. So it makes it easier for the council if there's a policy, because it just goes through staff, it doesn't come to the council. But number two, it stops it from being arbitrary and capricious as to who we're gonna grant and who we're not gonna
Yeah,
grant.
it gets really ambiguous.
Right, so as long as yes, the short answer is if we don't have a policy, there shouldn't, then we continue with the idea that there is no additional blue curbs, right? That's the policy currently, which is you can't have a
Right.
citizen come up and ask for a particular blue curb in a certain area, or we do a policy and then we just follow the policy. If
So
we go
at this
outside of
point-
those bounds, then yes, there's liability.
At
Right.
this point, we do not have a policy.
Correct.
Councilman Mayor Pro Tem has suggested that we move forward, and if we move forward, we'd paint the curb with the engineer's specifications, but we would still not have an ordinance. So,
A policy.
What did
which is
Mayor
order.
Pro Tem Legero, what was his
his
proposal?
suggestion was to grant the use, provided that the city engineer would determine the specifications for it.
If we granted that request and put the curb in now, before we have a policy, and then we put a policy in, would it be subject to the policy of the 1-year renewal at that
No.
point?
Well, as presented, Mayor Pro Tem's just indicating that the city engineer and staff should go look in this one particular place for the benefit of the people in that one particular area, and there is no other guidance except going out, seeing if a blue fit curb will fit, and then it goes
You
out.
made the motion to put the curb in, sorry.
This one, next question
You made,
is,
you made a
So-
motion.
I
to
thought
put
the motion was
curb-
to paint the curb.
So there would be no other guidance besides that going forward, and it would still be kind of up in the
Okay.
air.
let me ask you this, how long is it gonna take if we decide to get an ordinance that would address this issue?
It's a,
Policy.
yeah.
Huh?
Go
It's
ahead.
ju- It's just a policy. The ordinance would have the big
Well,
process.
how long would it take, excuse me, how long would it take for the policy to be enacted?
If you approved it today, it would be enacted.
Okay,
Right.
so,
Okay, go ahead.
because I didn't hear a second yet,
We haven't.
I'd like to move that we enact this policy, blue curb policy, and as its first provision to, whatever you said, paint the curb in front of that, you know,
So,
sounds really rough.
So you want to amend your
Let him
motion there,
restate it.
Mr.
Hold on, why don't
Please
you-
restate it, it was very lengthy what you said.
Okay,
well, I gave the reasoning is this particular location, there is a need for that particular area for handicap parking that is not on school property. There is a demonstrated need for that location, and we should move forward, not require an applicant, but as a city, we should paint a blue curb handicap parking stall there on Yosemite at Stanislaus. So, the problem is if we enact the policy first, he doesn't meet the criteria for the policy, cause now he's gonna have to go through the whole, okay, I got a garage, this, you know.
Paperwork.
But I'd also like to include your provision as part of my motion.
so how do you do that? How do you,
We enact the policy and,
Waive the garage, whatever
Just
requirements
have
of
it
the
as two
policy.
separate motions.
is it just cleaner?
Okay.
This guy can't amend his with this,
Okay,
it's too much.
let's-
No, I mean,
go through
there
it.
hasn't been a seconded, so
No.
you can make a motion, and whichever gets seconded first goes, or if there's none gets seconded, it all dies and
Well,
we
it
Okay.
sounds cleanest to do this. I make a motion that we accept and that we enact the blue curb
Let's stop.
policy as
The
written.
problem with that is, does that kill his ability
Nope.
to do the?
Negative,
It's
negative.
not. Okay, I'm good with it.
I second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the policy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries 5-0. Now, we have another motion.
I renew my motion.
Okay, I second your motion.
Well, let me clarify. In
Okay.
accordance with the adopted policy of blue curbs, I move that we,
Waive.
that we move forward on installing a blue curb handicap parking stall in front of, is it 1635? Mr. Anderson's house, and waive any showing by Mr. Anderson that, of the ability to put, parking on his property or garage waiver or whatever, per the policy. And that it would be renewable on a year-to-year basis,
Which is part of the
consistent with the policy.
policy.
Is that gonna cost him anything to renew that?
So currently, the policy does not have a fee. The council can decide to establish a fee for the annual waiver. I made the assumption we wouldn't do it,
Good.
Good assumption.
because that's
It's
typically
handicap.
how we are, yes. But yeah, and it's mixed. Some cities charge an annual fee of about $75, some don't charge at all.
$75, that's ridiculous. All right,
And you second
all right.
that.
Huh?
And you
And I
his
second it,
motion.
yeah. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0, no nays. Boom. There you go, Mr. Anderson. Thank you. You're welcome. Enjoy your blue curb. All righty, now we're down to, where are we? We're down to council communications. Let's start with Councilman Bellinger. What do you got for us this evening?
Not a whole lot. I think we've talked most of it out. I'm just happy to see that we've moved down on the ladder of the COVID, and looks like hopefully the letter we sent out might facilitate park feet a little bit more. Is there any movement on the letter we signed for
We're good. It's working fine.
we're moving forward with it? Okay. That's all I've got.
Okay, Councilman Grumridge.
Thank you, Mayor Alves. I think it's important that, we as a body acknowledge certain people for their hard work. whether or not we always agree with what they're doing. This is a community. It's made up of this local governance body. It's made up of the city staff and everybody involved. And I just want to give a shout out at this point to the city manager, Tammy Alcantar, for her efforts. I've heard from a few people that, you know, she's doing a great job, and I just want to throw that out there and make that comment public. I also want to shout out to Mayor Ed Alves. Spoke to a citizen the other day, and this guy could not stop raving about Ed. He made the comment that he would go to war for Ed, which I thought was pretty powerful. I said, wait, hang on.
Must owe him
Oh, that's
money.
crazy, man. Anyway, so I think that's good to just show appreciation to certain people up here, that we can take this job pretty seriously, but we got to keep it light every now and then, and everybody's doing their best. We're trying to have a good town, keep it safe, and keep it a nice community. I think everybody's doing the best they can, so I'll just say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Crummage, on that. All right, Councilman Swift.
Nothing for me tonight.
How about Mayor Pro Tem?
Nope, nothing.
Zippo.
Thank you.
Okay, let's do a brief on the park feed. I had the second meeting. Seems like things are going well. This year, we're gonna have mobile eateries instead of a bunch of food booths, I understand. That's what seems to be working best for us due to the complications of the COVID. And we're lining up the music, and they're gonna have some new music this year because everyone says the same thing. You do the same thing over and over, but no one ever tries to help us. But they can say you do the same thing over and over. But anyway, we're gonna have some
And
new
the
music.
date.
Huh?
The date.
Say again? Oh, the date is the
Yes.
6th and 7th. That week, the whole week of that. Because we have
August, yeah.
Miss Escalon, we have Junior Miss and Mr. Escalon, we have Senior Mr. and Miss Escalon, and then we have the weekend. We have the
Correct.
parade as well. So that's what's on agenda, and it looks like it's going fine so far. Our next meeting is next Thursday, if anyone's interested in showing up at 6 o'clock at Pizza Plus. All right, the next thing. Someone asked me the other day why there's no swings over at Sanchez, but there's swings in other parts. What's the answer to the question?
I'm not sure.
Okay, I'll tell him
I
that.
don't know if Justin is on the line, if he knows. I know we talked recently about a park that he was looking for swings
Give them
on.
back, Justin, they want their swings back.
Yeah, all I know is the swings were removed years back and were just never requested to put in, but it's something we can look into definitely.
I have probably a daily occurrence, if I go near that park, they always ask me, where are the swings at? How come we don't have them? I said, I don't know. I'll find out. So maybe we can look into that.
You got it.
Okay. Is there something you want to add?
I'm sorry, no, I believe there's probably, if they go to reinstall swings, there's an ADA requirement for ADA swings as well, so that might
Well,
be, yes.
ADA swings, that's gonna be interesting to think about.
They're very large, so somebody could pick up, let's say somebody that's in a wheelchair and put them on the swing and they get strapped in.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah,
I've seen them, yeah.
Because I know there's others in the other parks that have the, where you sit in them and you're locked in. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, there's some that are designed for adults that are unable to swing, and there are some that's designed for kids that
Okay.
get locked in as well.
All right, other than that, I don't have any other things to say, other than I'm proud of this council to deal with this gentleman's problem with the blue curb. That was really considerate of all of you guys to chip in and to show the concern for this gentleman. I've met his mother. I don't want to get too into it too much, but, it's a tough situation. And there's no easy answer. It's got to be worked out. And I think you guys did a great job on that. And also you, Counselor. And so I'm pretty much done. We're going to retire to a closed session. Thank everyone for coming. Hope to see you next time around. Okay, let's rock and roll.
Okay.
Alrighty.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
That's crazy, wasn't it?
Easy to lose it.
I lost it 3-4 times.
Give me just a second.
Yeah, it's like, I can make an amendment to your motion. I was like, oh, man, I'll just amend his motion. Oh, wait, no,
All my
you don't
fun
remember the
stuff
names.
that I have.
No, I can't amend it. That's a different motion. I can't do that.